The young actors on the film set were amusing themselves with the elderly woman sitting in the corner. Definitely a former wannabe star, now working as an extra. Eleanor Campbell smiled quietly. She had been a high school drama teacher for 30 years, had never dreamed of acting. But fate had a completely different plan for her. In a suburb of Los Angeles, an old warehouse building had been transformed into a film set. While the sun outside cast scorching summer heat, inside air conditioners worked at full power as the crew bustled about in sweat. The walls were painted dark blue, fake stained glass windows had been installed, and wooden church pews were neatly arranged. A fake cemetery had even been created in one corner, with realistic tombstones. The independent film Broken Dreams was the third feature by ambitious young director David Morrison. At 32, Morrison had attracted attention shortly after graduating from film school, becoming a critic's favorite. His previous two films had garnered praise at festivals, but hadn't performed well at the box office. This film would be Morrison's ticket to mainstream Hollywood, if everything went according to plan. The set was particularly tense today. High-level producers had come to visit, and even the studio head of the film company had stopped by briefly. Everyone seemed a bit too excited, a bit too nervous. Makeup artists, lighting technicians, and cameramen quietly did their jobs while the young actors joked among themselves, gossiped, and sometimes made fun of the extras, easy targets, to relieve this invisible pressure. "Look at that old woman in the corner," whispered Zach, a rising star actor, to his co-star Vanessa. Handsome, 28, with brown hair and a sharp jawline, Zach had become known for his role in a recent television series and was now transitioning to the big screen. "I bet she dreamed of being a star in her youth, and now she's doing extra work as a last hope," Vanessa giggled. "Definitely. Look how she sits, as if the camera might turn to her at any moment." Vanessa, 24, blonde and elegant, had transitioned from modeling to acting. She was hoping to make her big break with her lead role in Broken Dreams. "I'm sure she's watched a lot of old movies, practices Oscar speeches at home," Zach added, rolling his eyes. "Poor thing, can't accept reality." The person they were talking about was 68-year-old Eleanor Campbell. Her gray hair was neatly arranged in a bun, and she wore a modest but clean navy blue dress. She sat in a set chair with script pages in her hand. Classical music was playing in her earphones, Bach's cello suites, but the volume was low enough that she could hear conversations around her. Eleanor heard the young actor's comments about her and just smiled slightly. She didn't even raise her painted eyebrows. She had heard much worse things throughout her life. During her teaching years, she had become accustomed to teenagers' cruel comments. Besides, there wasn't really any malice in what these young people were saying, just an ignorant assumption, a quick judgment. She had never actually had any ambition in acting. For 30 years, she had taught drama at a high school in Pasadena, teaching the art of theater to hundreds of students. She had staged Shakespeare plays from the curriculum, directed small plays written by the students themselves, and helped dozens of young people get accepted to conservatories. After retirement, she spent her days reading, gardening, and occasionally meeting with former students. Her coming to this set was completely coincidental. A former student, Thomas Reeves, now working as an assistant director, had told her that they were looking for elderly extras for Broken Dreams. "They pay very well, Mrs. Campbell. You'll just stand in the background," he had said. Eleanor had accepted, thinking it would be additional income to her retirement pension. Also, seeing a film set would be interesting. She had always told her students about the film industry, but had never been on a real set herself. "All crew, 10 minutes for preparation," shouted the assistant director. Activity began on the set. Costume designers made final adjustments. Lighting technicians checked their settings. Set designers reviewed details. Today's scene was one of the emotional climaxes of the film. The main character, Lily, would attend her grandmother's funeral and confront family members she hadn't seen for years. Vanessa, who played Lily, was getting final touch-ups from her makeup artist when David Morrison approached her. David was a tall, thin man who was constantly in motion. He always wore a black t-shirt and black jeans, as if, like Steve Jobs, he found it practical to wear the same outfit every day. "Vanessa, this scene is very important for the film," said David, running his fingers through his hair. "Lily's emotions are mixed, sad, angry, guilty. I want to see all of them on your face. That complex relationship with your grandmother, your resentment toward your father, the inner conflict you experienced trying to deal with your mother's passive-aggressive attitude. Vanessa nodded, biting her lips. I understand, David. Don't worry, I'll handle it. I worked on emotional memory exercises last week. David sighed. He was secretly worried. Vanessa was technically talented, but had been lacking in emotional depth in the last few shots. Her modeling background ensured her face was photogenic from every angle, but sometimes her eyes remained empty, and this scene would be the heart of the film. As Eleanor watched the commotion around her, she involuntarily remembered her old teaching days. School play rehearsal days would be just as tense. Final adjustments before opening night, costume crises, forgotten lines, stage fright. How many times had she shown young people how to give more authentic performances? You can't play something you haven't lived, but you can use everything you have lived, she would always tell her students. How many times had she consoled students who couldn't hold back their tears? Drama brought out a person's deepest emotions, both fake ones and real ones. Everyone to your places, shouted David. Extras spread out in the church pews. Remember, this is a funeral. Everyone should look appropriately sad, but don't overdo it. You'll be in the background. Eleanor headed to the pews in the set section arranged as a church. She sat in a corner, in a place where she wouldn't attract attention. On either side of her, other elderly extras settled in. A retired grocer, a former mailman, an old character actor who had once played small roles. They were all here to earn extra money. "Camera!" shouted David. "Ready!" responded the cameraman. "Sound!" "Ready!" said the sound technician. "Action!" Vanessa entered through the church door, trying to wear a complex expression on her face. She was wearing a black dress with a thin necklace around her neck, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother character. She approached the coffin in the middle of the set church, hugged the actress playing her mother. Then suddenly she stopped and looked around angrily. "How did he get in here?" she shouted, as in the script. "How dare he?" The script required Lily to react to her long-estranged father being at the funeral. "Cut!" shouted David. "Vanessa, I want more emotion. This is a moment of shock. You haven't seen your father in 7 years, and suddenly he appears on the day you lost your grandmother. Anger, vulnerability, surprise. I want to see all of them." Vanessa nodded, slightly furrowing her brows. "Okay, let's try again." 5 more takes were done, but David was still not satisfied. Eleanor could see that Vanessa was trying to play more emotionally each time, but there was no real connection in the girl's eyes. It was as if she was playing emotionality, like striking an Instagram pose. "You need to go deeper, Vanessa," said David with obvious impatience in his voice. "This is a turning point in this woman's life. All the wrongs her family has done to her, the pain accumulated over years." Vanessa was starting to get annoyed. "I'm trying, David. Maybe there's a problem with the script. This sudden outburst of anger doesn't seem realistic to me." "Realistic?" David was about to explode. "When Lily was 17, her father abandoned her mother and her, leaving just a note. He didn't come to his own daughter's graduation, her college acceptance. Now, years later, he shows up on the day of the family's greatest loss. What's unrealistic about this anger?" The set had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching the two sides with tense looks. David took a deep breath. 15 minutes break. Everyone calmed down a bit. As the set dispersed, Eleanor remained in her seat. She had watched the scene carefully, observed Vanessa's struggles. The girl was doing the technically right things, but there was no real emotion in her eyes. Eleanor involuntarily wondered how she would play this scene. She remembered her daughter Rebecca, their last argument, all those words she couldn't say. Thomas, her former student, came to her. He was in his 30s, energetic, straightforward. He had been one of Eleanor's favorite students, not for his talent, but for his diligence and determination to succeed. "Mrs. Campbell, are you okay? Do you need anything?" Thomas asked with concern. "You look a bit pale." Eleanor smiled. "I'm fine, Thomas. Thank you. Just, this scene reminded me of something." "What's that?" My last argument with my daughter, Eleanor said quietly. Things I couldn't say at her funeral 5 years ago. Thomas's face fell. He knew that Eleanor had lost her daughter Rebecca in a car accident, but he had never heard the details. He had even learned that Mrs. Campbell had a daughter only during high school. His teacher always kept her private life separate from her students. Mrs. Campbell, Eleanor gently raised her hand. Don't worry, Thomas. It's been a long time. I was just thinking as I watched this scene, how does real pain feel? How does it look? Her voice was soft, almost thoughtful. Her eyes were focused on a distant point, as if she was seeing the past. Thomas hesitated for a moment, then said, "Wait a second," and quickly walked away. Shortly after, he returned with David Morrison. David was irritated and hurried. "Thomas, I really don't have time to talk to extras right now. We're in crisis, Vanessa." "Just a minute, David," Thomas insisted. "Mrs. Campbell, please. Could you tell again what you mentioned about your daughter?" Eleanor was surprised but gently nodded. This scene reminded me of my last argument with my daughter. Rebecca was 23, a brilliant medical student. She wanted to move to New York for a prestigious hospital internship. I objected. She would be too far away, living alone in the big city. I was worried. Eleanor paused for a moment, her gaze drifting away. We argued harshly. She told me I was overprotective, suffocating her. I told her she was being irresponsible. Eleanor took a deep breath. The next day, her voice trembled. The next day, the accident happened. When I arrived at the hospital, it was too late. At the funeral, standing by her coffin, there were things I couldn't say. I'm sorry. I love you. I just wanted you to be happy. As she spoke, a transformation had occurred on Eleanor's face. Her eyes were now misty, her voice had become fragile, yet there was a strength within, the resilience that comes with years, the resistance of a soul that has learned to live with pain. David stared at Eleanor's face. What he saw in the woman's eyes was exactly the emotional depth that Vanessa couldn't capture. Pain, regret, loss. It was all there, real and raw. Mrs. Campbell, David said slowly, I'm going to ask you a strange question. Have you ever acted in front of a camera? Eleanor laughed, wiping the tears from her eyes. No, of course not. I was just a teacher. A drama teacher, yes, but never professional. I tried getting on stage once in college, but I experienced stage fright. That's why I chose teaching, helping others shine. David thought for a moment, then made a quick decision. Mrs. Campbell, I want to try something. On page 37 of the script, there's a monologue Lily says to her mother, Carol. Could you read it quickly? Eleanor turned the pages in surprise. She had examined the script out of curiosity earlier. This one? She asked, showing the page she was pointing to. Yes, that's it. Would you read this? Just for yourself. No camera. Just me listening. Eleanor hesitated but then nodded. She put on her glasses and began to read. Mom, I know you can't hear me now, but there are things I need to say. I've always been angry at you for leaving me, but now I understand that you wanted to live your own life, wanted to escape from a marriage that was suffocating you. I wish I could have told you this while you were alive. I wish. As Eleanor read, her voice changed. She was no longer an extra, but a woman who had truly experienced loss. She was putting her own pain and regret into words. The words in the script had almost transformed into the words she couldn't say herself. When she finished, David was frozen. My God, said David, that was perfect. Eleanor smiled shyly. I taught young people how to act for 30 years. I must have picked up something. David quickly made a decision. Mrs. Campbell, I'm going to suggest something crazy to you. Would you like to take a small role in this film? The role of Mildred, Lily's distant relative. Currently just 2 scenes, but with important lines. Eleanor was shocked. Me? But I'm not an actor. From what I just saw, you're better than most professionals. Please, let's at least do a test shot. Thomas smiled encouragingly at his former teacher. Come on, Mrs. Campbell. You always told your students to take risks. Failure won't kill you, but being afraid to try will kill you slowly. Wasn't that one of your sayings, remember? Eleanor smiled. You're using my own words against me, Thomas. Clever. She took a deep breath. All right, let's try, but keep your expectations low. 2 hours later, the entire set crew was in shock. Eleanor's test shot was not just good, it was extraordinary. She had acted with a coolness in the moment of decision. And once the camera started rolling, it was as if she had taken on another personality. Despite staying behind the scenes for years, she was completely natural in front of the camera. David immediately called the screenwriter to ask him to expand the role of Mildred. Give her a backstory, make her a close friend of Lily's grandmother, let there be a secret between them, and add more scenes, at least 5 more scenes. But she's an extra, protested the producer, Brian Watts. She has no acting experience. What if she panics during filming? What if what you saw was just a fluke? Not anymore, David said with determination. She's my new discovery. And trust me, Brian, there's something about this woman. My instincts have never failed me. As Eleanor tried to cope with this sudden change, Vanessa and Zach's looks toward her had changed. They were no longer looking with mocking eyes, but with curiosity and perhaps a little jealousy. Mrs. Campbell, let's arrange an assistant for your role, the producer finally said. They can help you study your lines, explain set protocols. Eleanor nodded. Thank you, but I think I can handle it on my own. I taught how to study text for 30 years. Now it's time to practice. Throughout the filming of the movie, Eleanor Campbell continued to amaze the set crew. Despite having no professional training, she played each scene perfectly in the first or second take. Even the actors who shared scenes with her were impressed. How do you do this? Vanessa asked one day, now in a completely respectful tone. The young actress's initial resistance had given way to genuine curiosity. How can you be so good at something you've never done before? Eleanor smiled thoughtfully. Life experience, I guess. And maybe everything I taught my students for 30 years has somehow accumulated inside me. In our profession, 2 things are needed for success: technique and empathy. You can learn technique, but empathy, that is lived. But stage fright, cameras, all those people? I experienced stage fright when I was young, yes. But at 68, there are few things left to fear. Eleanor laughed. Death? Yes, a little. Failure? Not anymore. Stage fright? A luxury worry. Vanessa sank into thought. I wish I had been your student. You are now, said Eleanor, squeezing the young woman's hand. And remember, you're never too old to succeed, just as you're never too young to try. With Eleanor's mentoring, Vanessa had also begun to improve her performance. Now she wasn't just playing emotions, she seemed to really feel them. As their scene partnership developed, the relationships in the film had gained a convincing depth. When the post-production of Broken Dreams was completed, the first test screenings yielded much better results than expected. Viewers were particularly impressed by the character of Mildred, played by Eleanor. During scenes Eleanor played, the audience's emotional responses visibly increased. Laughter was more genuine, tears more real. When the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, rave reviews poured in about Eleanor's performance. The Hollywood Reporter wrote, Campbell, with no professional training, is a natural talent who should have been on screen for years. Her minimalist performance creates the most impressive moments of the film. Variety magazine evaluated, Campbell's performance is a tour de force carrying the accumulated wisdom and pain of long years. She might be Hollywood's greatest hidden treasure. The film secured major studio distribution and performed much better at the box office than expected. Eleanor was receiving media attention with astonishment. Suddenly, at 68, she had stepped into a completely new career. It's strange that my first film is receiving so much attention, she said in an interview, but I guess life sometimes keeps its best surprises for the most unexpected times. And then came the unexpected news. Eleanor Campbell had received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. When David gave her the news over the phone, Eleanor was having breakfast. She dropped the phone, her hands began to tremble. Are you sure? She asked, having difficulty believing. Absolutely sure, said David, his voice trembling with excitement. Eleanor, you're an Oscar nominee. But this is impossible. My first film, and definitely not your last. There are managers and agencies calling you. Screenwriters are writing characters with you in mind. Eleanor, you're a star now. Eleanor sat down confused. This was a completely unexpected success at this stage of her life. She didn't know what to do. David, I don't know. This is too much. You'll get used to it gradually, David said in a reassuring voice. Think not just about yourself, but about those who once didn't give you a chance. How many people you'll inspire with your story. These words touched Eleanor. In her teaching, she had always tried to inspire her students. Perhaps now she could inspire a wider audience. You're right, she finally said. I'll try. The Oscar nomination completely changed Eleanor's life. Suddenly she was being invited to talk shows, giving interviews to magazines, posing for famous photographers. Journalists camping outside her small home in Pasadena had surprised her neighbors. I never imagined anything like this, she said on Jimmy Kimmel's show. As a retired teacher, I went to a film set to earn a few extra dollars, and now I'm here. Why didn't you act before? Kimmel asked. Eleanor smiled thoughtfully. I guess the time hadn't come. When I was young, I didn't have enough courage. As you get older, you have less to lose. You fear less. Thinking about it now, maybe I was always ready. I just needed a chance. Kimmel laughed. As you say, in Hollywood, there's no such thing as too late, just talents that haven't been discovered yet. On Oscar night, as Eleanor walked the red carpet, cameras from all over the world were focused on her. At 68, wearing a bright navy evening gown, a retired drama teacher from Pasadena had suddenly become Hollywood's most talked about name. Many celebrities were lining up to take photos with her. Miss Campbell, how do you feel about this incredible journey? Asked a reporter, extending his microphone. Eleanor answered with her usual graceful smile. Life sometimes keeps its best surprises for the most unexpected times. Maybe there's a talent waiting to be discovered inside all of us. What would you like to do in your career from now on? I've always been a teacher, said Eleanor. And now with this new platform, maybe I can continue teaching in a different way. I can show people, especially the elderly, that it's never too late to chase their dreams. At the awards ceremony, when the Best Supporting Actress category was announced, the hall held its breath. The competition was strong. 2 Oscar-winning actresses, a British theater legend, and a rising star were all nominees. The famous actor opening the envelope smiled and announced, and the Oscar goes to Eleanor Campbell for Broken Dreams. As the hall rose to a standing ovation, Eleanor took the stage. Her hands trembled as she accepted the golden statue. She was trying to grasp the reality of this moment. At 68, in her first film, she had won the world's most prestigious cinema award. She approached the microphone and began to speak. I accept this award on behalf of all the students I taught for 30 years. I always taught them to trust their inner voice, not to be afraid to take risks. And now at this point in my life, I'm grateful that I followed my own advice. She paused, her eyes filled. And to my daughter, Rebecca, I miss you every day. Your courage and passion inspired me. This award is for you. When she finished her speech, many eyes in the hall were teary. The powerful figures of Hollywood, sitting in the front row, had been touched by this sincere speech. Eleanor was aware that this moment was bigger than herself. She was just a symbol showing that life can offer surprises at any age, as long as you have the courage. Backstage, David Morrison and Thomas couldn't hold back their tears. At the victory celebration, David raised his glass. To Eleanor Campbell, for reminding us that there's a star inside all of us, and for teaching us that helping others shine is actually showing our own brightness, added Thomas, looking proudly at his former teacher. Eleanor smiled gracefully. Thomas, every teacher is only as good as her students. Your success and that of others was my greatest reward. This, she said, pointing to the Oscar statuette, is just a nice surprise. From that day on, Eleanor made several more films, all of which received acclaim. New scripts began to be written for elderly characters, no longer just neighbor or grandmother roles, but complex characters carrying the main story. The perception of age in Hollywood had begun to change, if only slightly. However, Eleanor's greatest passion became mentoring young actors. Using the money she earned from the Oscar, she established a foundation in her own name, one that provided scholarships for drama education, focusing especially on disadvantaged youth. Each year, dozens of young people got the chance to receive education thanks to the Eleanor Campbell Drama Scholarship. In an interview, she had said, "There is no age limit to dreaming and believing in yourself. Sometimes the second act of life can be more exciting than the first. It's not about timing, it's about your courage." 5 years later, on Eleanor's 73rd birthday, her former students and friends from the film industry gathered together. David Morrison had become Eleanor's closest friend and confidant. He was now one of Hollywood's most respected directors, largely thanks to the success of Broken Dreams. "I raise a glass to Eleanor," said David, turning to the guests. "Thank you for teaching me that the teacher-student relationship never ends. It just changes form. You are always my teacher." Vanessa was there too. Now she was also an Oscar winner. "I never forgot something Eleanor told me on set," she said. "When the camera captures you, never act. Just remember the truth." This was the advice that changed my career. At the end of the birthday party, Eleanor looked at her friends and loved ones. This last chapter of her life had brought unexpected happiness and meaning. Perhaps her daughter Rebecca was right. Sometimes one needs to shed their fears and take brave steps to discover oneself. The young actors on the film set no longer made fun of new extras, because thanks to Eleanor Campbell, they had seen the potential waiting inside everyone. And perhaps the next great talent was sitting in an unexpected corner, quietly smiling. Thomas came to her side to refresh Eleanor's glass. "Mrs. Campbell," he said, still addressing her with respect, "I've always wondered, that day on set, what made me draw David's attention to you? Why did you mention your daughter?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "Maybe it was my daughter's dream," she said softly. "Rebecca always wanted to act, but I guided her toward a safe career, medicine. Maybe this was a chance to complete her unfinished dreams. Or maybe after 30 years of shining light on others, it was time to let my own light shine." Eleanor raised her glass, her eyes sparkling. "To the second chances life gives us." Years later, this story continued to be told as a legend in the film industry. How an elderly woman mocked by a set crew became an Oscar legend. But for Eleanor, the real reward was proving that life can offer new beginnings at any age, at the most unexpected moment. At 80, Eleanor Campbell was addressing young people with these words: "Never say, 'It's too late now.' And you elderly people, never say, 'I'm too old now.' Life is ready to surprise you as long as you have the courage." If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered a hidden talent at an unexpected moment? What do you think about second chances in life? Where in the world are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories full of life surprises.